Today we are going to be breaking down how I scored this scene from Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. We'll be going over orchestration in each section in detail so you can see what's going on and how the programming was done, as well as some of the basics in approaching a scene like this. So whether you're a film composer or just a composer or producer, there's going to be lots of helpful stuff in here, so let's dive right in. Alright, so here we are inside the main project. There's like about 4 or so main sections to this scene. So I'm going to play through the first one and then we're going to talk about it and do each section like that. So let's take a listen to the first main section of the score. Alright, so this first section, it starts off, and the villain is conjuring up this fire dragon, and that goes through this entire first section. So it's a very dark, very scary sort of beginning to this piece, and very intense as well. Starts off the bat very intensely. So when planning this out, I knew that I wanted to hit this moment right here where the fire dragon was fully completed and just have a moment where you're kind of soaking in the fear, where you could see it in Dumbledore's face as it's being conjured up. And I wanted to have that be emphasized a little bit, that this is a really powerful thing that's happening right now. So the section's broken up into about 3 different pieces. It starts with the conjuring phase, whereas everything's building up to this moment, and then it's here and it's scary and there's a big reveal, and then there's a bit of action phase where they're fighting the dragon and it gets defeated in the end. So let's look at the orchestration here. I have this sort of theme feeling for Voldemort in here, and it's in the strings, and it's a 7/8 pattern. 7/8 is a very common action and villain sort of feel. It's very uneasy. So let's just take a listen to just the strings so you get an idea of what this Voldemort theme that I made sounds like. It sounds like this. Alright, so you can kind of hear it there in the low strings. That was inspired a little bit by Lord of the Rings. If you listen to the Nazgul theme, it has this sort of motor in the low basses that kind of walk up and walk down. I think it makes a really good villain theme. So the strings are doing that in full. Every piece of the string section. You see we have cello and basses are here in octaves, and they're on quarter notes, or eighth notes really is what it is, because we're in 7/8, but they're taking up a whole beat here, and then the violas and second violins are on top of that, and they're in 16th notes. The lower the instrument, the slower it moves. If you make it move too fast, it becomes muddy. Cellos could probably handle 16th notes, but it sounds cleaner when they're just doing eighths. So cello and bass just have eighths. More drive is added by the second violins, and violas doing 16ths, and then the second time through, the first violins join in another octave up. So this is just octaves here on that pattern, and that's all that's happening in strings through this first section. Not much going on in the brass here. It's just the trumpets, and they join in towards the end on that second round, and they're doing a pretty interesting sort of pattern. I gotta move this a little bit here. It sounds like this. So that's just a repetitive motif that is building. Again, something I like to do to build intensity is you repeat the same thing, and it's getting up in dynamics, it's getting up in register even sometimes, and that can really bring up the intensity. Michael Giacchino does that a lot. If you listen to his score for The Incredibles or for Mission Impossible 3, repetitive themes that build in intensity are a great way of raising the bar for something like this. And then the woodwinds are following that theme in the low winds, that bass sort of Voldemort theme. And then there's a high woodwinds effect patch that I have coming on here. This is in Musio, not that one. Perhaps it's this one. Yeah, there we go. Musio Hollywinds. It's a pitch bend effect that is happening here. We could take a listen to the woodwinds real quick. So the woodwind effect is giving it a very eerie feeling, and then doubling the strings again with that low motor. Woodwinds doubling strings is always a great idea. Percussion-wise, there's this tubular bells that keep rising up chromatically, or intervals here, not chromatics. And the percussion down here, we'll just take a listen to it. It's not doing a whole lot. Timpani and snare are really, and bass drum are really carrying it here. So right there I had a tam-tam that did enter in on this big reveal here. Tam-tams can be a great way of opening things up. They sound really big. You got to be careful because they're a low register cymbal, so they can sound muddy, but they do sound very big. So simple percussion there, and then the last part of this is going to be the choir, and we'll just take a listen here to what they're doing real quick. So nothing too fascinating in the choir there. I have realized that choir samples are great at this little falling off effect. And again, you can see it's two chords and they're just right off from each other, and I just go short off of the second one. But it sounds like the choir is just falling off of that note when you listen to it. And it's kind of cool because samples can't actually do slides down very naturally. But this technique works great for that falling kind of sound. I think it sounds very eerie, a very gothic, big sound. So that's that first reveal section. And then we hit here where it's finished conjuring up, and it's this big brass theme that comes in the French horns. So let's take a listen to that theme really quick. I'll let you see it here as well. So it starts up in a register for the main part, and then it jumps down an octave when the stabs are coming in, giving it lots of movement, lots of fear. The rest of the brass, while we're here, isn't doing a whole lot, but we can take a look at it. Just these stabs that'll come in later. And then stabs. So just those accents, not too much, mainly the French horns doing that theme. Strings do change a little bit. Let's take a listen. So kind of this trill sort of effect in the high strings is what's going on, as well as the basses and cello are doubling this note here, just grabbing a driving pulse rhythm. I did change time signatures technically to a 3/4 from our 7/8 to a 3/4 because the timing worked out a little bit better. But overall, it's a little bit free feeling. There's not a huge set of driving rhythm to here. Percussion is just really following those accents. Same with the choir on the bottom. And then we get into the battle part of it here. Let's take another listen to it. Again, nothing super complicated. There's a big melody here in our bass brass ensemble. Again, that's bass brass and the French horns, so that would be tubas, trombones, bass trombones, and then French horns. And they do split a little bit towards the end of it here. I'll give you a look. You can see the French horns got a couple more notes in there than the bass. Dragging the harmony, we're in E flat minor, if I remember correctly when I did this scene. Strings, by the way, for this part, just go right back to that main Voldemort theme in the basses, and then there's a little bit of contrasting pattern in the high strings here. You could take a listen to just the high strings if we want to. And that continues to repeat. Just to add a little bit of variation, you can hear it on top of that main bass line. Even though it's in 7/8, it sort of gives you a structure that you can follow so it doesn't feel completely out of control. Because they are masters at fighting. It's not completely out of control, even though it's very dangerous. Percussion down here is just pretty much, again, it's just really snare and bass drum through this main part. That's a little too much percussion. But you can see this is our snare pattern, cymbals, bass drum pattern right down there. All together sounds like this. Go, and you did hear a timpani roll back there as well. And that's pretty much all that's in this first section of the piece. So we'll move on. There's a change here that happens. So Voldemort starts with his attack and then gets extinguished, and then Dumbledore comes back with his attack, and that's this second section here. So let's take a listen. Changes again. So this is like the good guy moment here in this scene. Still have these low brass stabs, but the melody moves up to the trumpets before it was in French horns and low brass, and to create a little bit brighter, more friendly sound, it moves up to the trumpets. There's a counter melody that's happening in the violins up here, as well as a new motor entering into the strings. So let's just take a listen here to the motor first and hear how that has changed. So we are in 4/4 now, and we have also changed keys to C minor at this point. So again, key change, time signature change, register change of the melody, all of these signal that something new is about to happen in the fight. In this case, it's going to turn a little bit more towards the good guy side of things. All of those parts are in there, and then we'll add that violence counter melody on top of that motor here. Go, and that fits very nicely behind the trumpet's main theme. We'll solo the brass section next. I'll give you a look at what's going on here. Stabs and low brass. Percussion changes here. There's a lot going on. First, we're adding in that bell ensemble, the tubular bells, but we're also going to add in a celeste and a glockenspiel. Again, higher, happier sounding instruments here. They sound like this. So we have the celeste and the tubular bells on melody there with the trumpets, and then the glockenspiel is going to be doubling a string motor, or just a trill kind of back and forth between two notes. You can see it there, C and G, and it's going to be on the eighth notes of the measure, giving it a bit more tingly sort of sound, good guy kind of feeling. Again, that's what we're going for here. Percussion in the bottom here is going to be, again, snare, bass, drum, but we're also adding in some ethnic drums and low drums. Here, take a listen to this. This is setting the stage, kind of building up the intensity a little bit more. It is a shift towards good in the score, but the intensity is rising. So we're adding in more percussive elements to help drive that along. These are from Apocalypse, which Museo has added to their catalog, and I love that about this. Choir is the last thing in this section, and they're going to be moving up in register, and they sound a little bit happier than they did before. Sounds like this. And then we move on to the third section of this piece, and I'm going to play it all the way through, and then we'll break it down. And we take a bit of a change again. It goes back to a darker side of the thing. Voldemort starts to break out of what Dumbledore has him in, and he starts to take back over the fight again from here pretty much until the end. He's got the upper hand a little bit. And so the theme naturally changes back into our Dumbledore or Voldemort pattern. So we have in the strings this Voldemort pattern coming back. But you notice it's quite a bit faster than it was at first. This is more intense. We're building up to a bigger moment. So the first half of that is just pretty much the Voldemort thing, and then the second half here is where they hit this. I love this shot where they both are kind of in a clash here, just raw power against power, I guess. And this is the moment I decided to bring in the full main theme, so we could take a listen to that in the brass, because that's what's going to carry most of what is going on here in this section. Just like that, and that's kind of what opens up that moment, gives more impact. Strings behind that are giving support. Again, we have these sort of stabs here that lead up into it, and then we have second violins are going to follow on the melody. This would be cellos down here, have this driving eighth note rhythm, basses on the accents, and then violins, first violins are going to be on this pattern. It sounds like this. Woodwinds are going to be following that top pattern. High woodwinds doubling the high strings there. Percussion-wise, things get pretty basic for this moment. Sounds like this by itself. So just following those bottom accents, we have the low strings and the low percussion on those accents. And a choir at this moment here, it's just going to be these big ascending chords. Kind of the bass line that I chose for this one is just going to be E flat to G flat to B flat. So just right up a E minor chord. They are just in octaves. Next section here is going to be just a series of quick stabs, and then we get into the final fourth section. Take a listen to it. There we go. Not too much. Everybody's doing the same thing here right now. Strings, brass, and percussion is joining on those accents, as well as the choir on all of those. And then it goes into the final section, which is this build up to the end. So we're going to take a listen to that. Nothing too complicated here, but I think it fits really nicely behind what's happening visually. And And that is the end of the scene. So this part here, just these big brass chords here that are just going to be ascending, rising up starts just low brass, then we add in French horns, jump up a little bit, add in the trumpets, and then they jump up a little bit, and we end up here at the end with 6 notes in the brass section, which is a lot for a brass section, but sounds pretty cool. So you could divide those notes up a variety of ways. In the strings, I'm sure you heard it, it goes back to that Voldemort theme. This is Voldemort's time. He thinks he's got him here. This will be like the final blow, so we jump back to there with the strings. Repeating themes or just repetitive sort of feeling can be good for building intensity because it makes the listener anticipate or want something to happen next. But you have to make sure that you're adding in enough things that it doesn't become boring, even though it's not there for very long. Choir jumps in here a little bit later on, and then they build up in chords as well. Percussion we could take a listen to by itself. Nothing too complicated here. Be easier if you just listen than me explaining it. So we do hear these metal hits up on top. I did use that at the beginning too, kind of wanted to pair it with the string thing for a Voldemort sort of a sound. But pretty basic in the percussion, builds a little bit on the second round through. You can see the velocity comes up a little bit more. We add in a swell cymbal there at the end, and a crash piatti cymbal comes in there on that second to last measure. Woodwinds here are going to be, again, the friends of the strings, and they're going to be doubling that pattern, giving it a little bit more fill, a bit rounder sound, and helping it cut through the rest of the mix a little bit better. All right, so I wanted to take a moment here to also talk about the pre-work that goes in to scoring a scene like this and how the music is developed beforehand. And there's sort of 2 main sections of developing the music that, in the ways I like to think about it. And one is developing the music side of things in terms of theme and harmony and even orchestration a little bit, though most of that will come in later. But theme and harmony first, and then the second half of it is spotting the scene, finding the hit points, and building a tempo map and a time signature map. So I sort of have the rest of it planned out, and I know what parts of the music that I developed is going to fall on what parts of the scene. And then after that, the actual composing part is really just orchestrating, adding in filler moments, and orchestrating the main themes like that. So the main theme that I developed for this piece, again, we're in E flat minor, and it sounds like this. And it really leans into minor seconds, which are just half steps. And you see there's 2 of them right here on the top, and that creates a very dissonant feeling, which is what I wanted for the scene. Dissonance equals danger in film scoring. So developing this was really a matter of taking a normal E major or E minor scale and finding what extra note can I put in there that adds in extra dissonance. And in this case, it's an augmented 5th. E minor naturally will have a B flat, but adding in a B natural adds more tension. It's also a supernatural sort of sound by itself. It sounds kind of pretty by itself, but when you add it in with the tonic and the 7th, it starts to sound a lot more dissonant. Harmonically, I didn't go very complicated with it. Action pieces are usually not the time to go super complicated with harmonizing, adding in lots of chords, because you want it to sound dissonant. So you want to have enough notes where it's dissonant, but you don't want to have so many notes that it becomes confusing to the listener or distracting to the listener. Harmonically, I just chose octaves, walking up in E minor scale. There's lots of ways this can be harmonized, and when developing themes for film, it's great to leave your theme sort of open, so you can use the same theme for an action piece like this and a perhaps more tender or dramatic moment later on in the film. So, because this theme could be harmonized in a major key, something like that. Just kind of making it up on the fly there, but that would be in E flat major. The Voldemort theme also leans into minor seconds. It sounds like this. And it's got these minor seconds here. Again, we have that augmented fifth at the top of the pattern. Rest of these are normal E minor scale notes, but there's a tritone hidden in there between that augmented fifth and the second note of the scale. The second half of this was spotting the scene and building out the tempo map. Every time when I drop a scene into the DAW session to score it, before I record a note of music, I want to feel what tempo is right for the scene. So faster tempo is definitely for action here. I started it at 127, which is sort of the slow end, but it's in 7/8, so it works out being plenty fast. So tempo and time signature are chosen right off the bat. And then I would go along the scene and I'd mark the hit points. I would decide what moments I want the music to change. For instance, as I was talking about earlier, the reveal of the big fiery snake, I wanted to mark that musically. I wanted to mark the change to where Dumbledore takes over with his spell. I wanted to mark that musically. And then throughout it, I wanted to keep having this contrast of themes of Dumbledore when he's winning, something different going on there, and Voldemort when he's winning, something different going on with him. And then I also put in markers to help me keep track of when I wanted those moments to be, when I wanted the music to change. And most of these in here aren't exact. There's a few moments. There's hard hit points and soft hit points are generally the way they're described. Hard hit points are when the music needs to happen right on the beat. And soft hit points are where there's a new idea that starts here. The music needs to change, but it's not hitting a specific frame or a specific sound in the film. It just needs to change at this moment, which is what most of these are throughout here. And then after that is all planned out, I have my themes written, I have my tempo map, my time signatures, my key, which would be part of developing the theme, and also all of the markers as what points I want the music to change. Then I will start writing the actual music. And that's it. If you want more videos about film scoring, let me know. This is what I love to do with music, but I also would be happy to just make videos about the production side and composing side of things. Whatever you're interested in, let me know down below in the comments. But otherwise, I hope you found this helpful. God bless, and I'll see you in the next one.